After the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, an 8 p.m. curfew was established here in Washington and in many places in the West for all people of Japanese descent. Rachel Maddow helps tell the story of Japanese internment, through a 6-part narrative podcast called Burn Order. I encourage you to listen to it. But she does this by highlighting the stories of individuals telling this larger story. One of those individuals is a Japanese-American University of Washington student, Gordon Hirabayashi. In late 1941 and in early 1942, Rachel Maddow tells the listener, Gordon Hirabayashi is a 24-year-old senior finishing up his degree in sociology. His parents immigrated to this country from Japan, but Gordon and his siblings were all born here in the United States. They are all American citizens. Gordon is a Quaker. He's a young man of strong principles and strong religious faith. Posters have started going up all around Seattle, ordering that anyone of Japanese ancestry has to be off the streets by 8 p.m. Get off the streets, get behind closed doors. Gordon, at first, follows the curfew order. He rushes home from the library or wherever he is. He makes sure he's back inside his dorm room before the clock strikes 8 p.m. He does do that for a while, but then he stops. Here's what Gordon says. Why am I dashing back when my fellow American dormmates are continue doing what they're doing? And you know, the obvious factor of my Japanese ancestry, that's the only reason that differentiated me on this order. And I said to myself, gee, if the American Constitution means anything at all, this is wrong. And if I believe in the Constitution, I've got to object to this. So he starts to defy the order openly. But no one catches him. No one even notices. No one comes to arrest him. But this wasn't really a good thing for him as someone who wanted to resist the order, not only for himself, but on behalf of other people who were also had this imposed upon them. And so when another order was given, the order for all Japanese people of Japanese descent to load themselves into buses, and again, he doesn't want to just get away with defying the order for himself. He wants his defiance to be noticed in order that it might change something. And so he writes a letter to the authorities. Here's a bit of what he wrote. This order for the mass evacuation of all persons of Japanese descent denies them the right to live. It forces thousands of energetic, law-abiding individuals to exist in a miserable, psychological, and horrible physical atmosphere. This order limits to almost full extent the creative expressions of those subjected. It kills the desire for a higher life. Hope for the future is exterminated. Human personalities are poisoned. The very qualities which are essential to a peaceful, creative community are being thrown out and abused. Over 60% are American citizens, yet they are denied on a wholesale scale without due process of law the civil liberties which are theirs. If I were to register and cooperate under these circumstances, I would be giving helpless consent to the denial of practically all of the things which give me an incentive to live. I consider it my duty to maintain the democratic standards for which this nation lives. Therefore, I must refuse this order for evacuation. Signed, Gordon K. Hirabayashi. A few years ago, chef Samin Nosrat published a book along with a Netflix limited series called Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat. Maybe you've watched it. The episode on salt opens with this line: salt. It's fundamental to all good cooking. It enhances flavor, and it even makes food taste more like itself. In short, salt brings food to life. Salt, of course, has other purposes like preservation, changing the freezing or the boiling point of water or ice. It tenderizes our food. It slows down the fermentation of yeast in bread, and even more. But seasoning food with salt to enhance the flavor of food, Samin says, is one of the few elements that unites all cuisines. So as people of faith, then, we might deduce that our role as salt of the earth kind of people is to be the kind of people who help others be more themselves. That our presence as Christ followers in our communities should have a salt-like effect, enhancing what is already there to be more fully what and who it was made to be. We should be practicing a life that could unite people in all times and places. The harvesting of salt happens a bit differently in different places, depending on the environment. In Japan, there's not enough days of sun to harvest salt like we do here, maybe in the Pacific Northwest, and so they harvest salt from seaweed. In Oregon, it's harvested from the seawater directly through concentration and evaporation, right, through chemical processes. In other places, like in the Middle East, they harvest salt through solar evaporation, enlisting the sun in the process. Himalayan pink salt is mined from mountains, but in every place, salt is both foundational, it's fundamental to the place, and it's hidden away. It is in the structure of mountains, or it is in the salinity of the sea. It is under rock, it's dissolved in water. It is there, you know it's there, but it's a bit hidden. And we might think that this is very different or in conflict with the next encouragement Jesus has for us, to be the light of the world, to be a city on a hill, to be seemingly very visible, unable to be hidden, a city on a hill, he says. But light is also sort of foundational and hidden. It's kind of hard to imagine this with people who have electricity and can turn it on and see a light bulb, right? But light, in essence, right, is foundational and hidden. Right? Have you ever been working maybe out in your garden and it becomes dusk and you don't even notice it's getting dark because your eyes adjust over time, and then suddenly you can hardly see a thing because light has gone away? It is not the light of day that you see, right? But you are able to see by said light. It is foundational to being able to see. You trust in it, depend on it, and you notice it when it's gone. The process of harvesting salt brings it into usefulness, like turning a light on or like the day coming into being. It has to become, but it always is. It doesn't need to be created. It just becomes. Salt is, light is. But salt and light are not living into their fullest purposes until they're being used, being put to use. Light enables sight by reflecting off of objects, right? Light under a bushel basket does not enable sight for anyone. To be salt and light, to heed these instructions from Jesus, means then to put ourselves to use. To put ourselves to use to enable people to see more clearly and to be more fully who they were created to be. Not to be hidden away in mountains or in seawater or under bushel baskets, but to radiate, to season, to marinate, to tenderize, to be put to doing. Ancient salt could lose its flavor when contaminants got in during the production process or when moisture got into the salt and it dissolved away. And so if salt helps food taste more like itself, and we are the salt of the earth, then how could we cheer on policies that, quote, limits to almost full extent the creative expressions of those subjected? Or policies that kills the desire for a higher life, that exterminated people's hope for the future? And if we are at risk of losing our flavor, our effectiveness, then must we, don't you think, guard ourselves against any contamination, against any watering down of our faith commitments? Then what is it, beyond metaphor, that we should be put to doing? What is it that helps people become more fully who they were created to be? What is it that must be done to give people greater vision and clarity and transparency and enlightenment, hope for the future? What should we be put to doing, as John Wesley says in the Wesleyan Covenant Prayer we sort of started this season with? What should we be put to doing? The people that Isaiah is prophesying to are asking a question, sort of an existential question. What can we do that will get God's attention? This question is not really asked with any true humility and openness, but it seems like they're asking it with a little bit of resentment. If it were today, it might sound like, I have crosses hanging in my home, and I bought a sign that says, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And I carry around my Bible with me, and I share Facebook posts that have to do with Jesus. And I tell people in public, God bless you. Like, God, what more could I possibly do to get you to pay attention to me? What can I do to get a response from you? And God responds to this question with sort of a parental correction. You perform your faith in public so that everyone can see, but you consider service workers the help and you treat them like garbage. You fight against fair wages, you vote for your own self-interests alone, and you lift people into high office who hate the poor and seek to make them poorer. And then you call for me? This is not what I have asked for. The Message version of our scripture, our Isaiah scripture, translates God's call this way. This is the kind of fast day I'm after. To break the chains of injustice, get rid of exploitation in the workplace, free the oppressed, cancel debts. What I'm interested in seeing you do is sharing your food with the hungry, inviting the homeless poor into your homes, putting clothes on the shivering ill-clad, being available to your own families. Do this and the lights will turn on, and your lives will turn around at once. Your righteousness will pave your way. The God of glory will secure your passage. Then when you pray, God will answer. You will call out for help, and I'll say, here I am. So Gordon Hirabayashi spends 5 months in jail awaiting trial. And at trial, he's convicted. The judge sentences him to 90 days in a federal work camp in Tucson, Arizona. Remember, he's in Seattle. Historian Frank Abe recounts, the judge says, fine, here you're sentenced to 90 days and you must report to the work camp in Tucson, Arizona. But we have no way of transporting you there. And Gordon said, well, if I can get there on my own, will you let me serve my time in the work camp? And they go, okay, fella, best of luck to you. So Gordon Hirabayashi, in fact, hitchhiked from the Northwest down to Arizona. Gordon is so determined to oppose what the government is doing, so determined to be jailed for refusing to go along with it, as a matter of principle, that he hitchhikes across multiple states to get himself to prison. He sleeps in ditches on the side of the road along the way, only to find that when he arrives in Tucson, that this prison, this federal work camp, they have no idea what to do with him. They have no record of him, are not expecting him. Gordon Hirabayashi showed up at the work camp in Tucson, and the authorities there had not been notified, and so they did not know who he was or what he was doing there. Rachel Maddow says, prison officials have no record of who he is or why he's supposed to report to them, and so they tell him, hey, why don't you just get out of here? Why don't you just go home? And Gordon tells them, I cannot go home. But they won't let him stay. He takes himself into town, into Tucson, he has dinner, he thinks about it, and then he goes back to the prison to insist that they must take him into custody. The historian Frank Abe says, he had to show his papers and argue that he had been sentenced to serve time there, and eventually they took him in. It was clear that Japanese Americans were pretty much on their own contending with this whole thing. And so Gordon thought, well, why not me? I'll do it. This week, I am seeking to model my life after the Gordon Hirabayashis of this world, who pattern their life after Christ, right? The one who calls us to be in such solidarity with those shackled by the oppressive, fascist, imperial powers of the world, that who use the same tools over and over and over again to convince us to hate each other and to put one another in prison. So what is it that we are to be put to doing? What are we to be put to doing? We are to be put to doing justice so that our neighbors can be more themselves. Injustice, oppression, heavy yokes, chains, these are things that are contaminants that make people lose their flavor, their zest for life, right? Their joy, their humanity. I hope you'll join me this week in seeking to model your life after the Isaiahs of this world, after the salt of the earth kind of people who employ themselves for the work of helping people to be more and more themselves. The city on a hill kind of people who do not do their good works just in the dark for the purposes of making themselves feel better, but who insist on shining a light on what is wrong, on all that is unjust in the world. I hope you'll join me in seeking to listen for God's voice in people like Gordon who, like God, say, "Here I am. Why not me? I'll do it."